The great space station Nexus Prime floated in the void between star systems. Its massive rings spun slowly, creating artificial gravity for the thousands of alien beings who lived and worked inside. Today, the Galactic Council was meeting to discuss a new threat. Ambassador Kelthera of the Zephyrian Empire stood before the council chamber. Her blue skin gleamed under the bright lights, and her 4 arms moved gracefully as she spoke. Behind her, a holographic display showed images of small metal ships and primitive space stations. "Fellow council members," Kelthera said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation devices, "we face a new danger. A young species has begun to spread beyond their home world. They call themselves humans." The council chamber buzzed with quiet conversations. Representatives from dozens of alien races leaned forward to study the images. The ships looked crude compared to their own technology, but they were clearly functional. "These humans have built colonies on 3 different worlds," Kelthera continued. "Their population grows rapidly. They show aggressive expansion patterns. If we do not act now, they could become a serious threat to galactic peace." From the back of the chamber, an ancient voice spoke up. "Young Kelthera, you speak of threats too quickly." All heads turned toward Elder Voxani of the Keeper race. The Keepers were among the oldest beings in the galaxy. They had been exploring space when most other races were still learning to make fire. Voxani's body was tall and thin, covered in gray skin that looked like old leather. His large eyes had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. "Elder Voxani," Kelthera said with a slight bow, "surely you understand the danger of letting a warlike species expand unchecked." The old keeper rose slowly from his seat. His movements were careful and deliberate. "I understand many things, young one. I understand that our archives contain warnings written long before your empire was born." Voxani walked to the center of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. "The oldest galactic law is written in the sacred archives. It says, 'Never underestimate a species that climbs from the darkness of their homeworld.'" Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The younger races had heard these old sayings before, but they rarely paid attention to them. "Elder," said Ambassador Thekmore of the Nexari, his crystalline body chiming softly as he spoke, "those are just old stories. We have advanced technology. We have powerful fleets. What could a primitive species do against us?" Voxani's large eyes fixed on the crystal being. "The archives speak of other species who thought the same way. They all learned too late that climbing species are different. They do not give up. They do not surrender. They adapt and overcome." Kelthera's 4 arms crossed in frustration. "With respect, Elder, these humans barely have faster than light travel. Their weapons are simple projectile systems. They have no shields, no energy weapons, no mental defenses. They are insects compared to us." "Insects," Voxani repeated slowly. "Yes, many have called climbing species by such names, until those insects swarmed them." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some council members supported Kelthera's position. They believed in taking action before the humans became stronger. Others listened to Voxani's warnings about the old laws. While the council argued far across the galaxy, Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of his ship, the Terra's Hope. The vessel was small by galactic standards, but it represented the best that human technology could produce. Jake was young for a starship captain with short brown hair and steady blue eyes. He had spent the last 5 years exploring the outer edges of human space. "Captain, called out his sensor operator, a woman named Amy Parker. "I'm picking up something strange near the Jupiter mining station." Jake moved to her console and looked at the readings. "What kind of strange?" "Unknown object, sir. It's small, maybe the size of a shuttle. But it's not responding to our signals, and it's not on any flight plan." "Take us closer," Jake ordered, "but keep our weapons ready." The Terra's Hope changed course toward Jupiter. The gas giant's many moons were home to several human mining operations. The stations pulled valuable materials from the planet's atmosphere and moons. It was important work for the growing human colonies. As they approached, Jake could see the object on the main screen. It was unlike anything humans had built. The surface was smooth and silver, with strange markings along the sides. It moved, in ways that seemed to ignore normal physics. "Captain," Amy said, her voice tight with concern, "it's scanning us. I'm reading energy patterns that I've never seen before." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it seemed they had their answer. "Record everything," he ordered. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we may have made first contact." The alien probe finished its scan and suddenly accelerated away from them. It moved faster than any human ship could follow, disappearing into the darkness between the stars. Unknown to Jake, his ship's quantum signature had just been recorded and transmitted across the galaxy. The probe was a Zephyrian intelligence gatherer, and it had found exactly what it was looking for. Back on Nexus Prime, the council session was ending in disagreement. Kelthara had failed to get approval for immediate action against the humans. The vote was close, but Elder Voxani's warnings had swayed enough council members to block the resolution. "This is a mistake," Kelthara said, as the council members began to leave. "We will regret not acting while we had the advantage." Voxani approached her as the chamber emptied. "Young ambassador, I have lived for over 2,000 of your years. I have seen species rise and fall. I have read the accounts of those who ignored the old warnings." "And what did those accounts say?" Kelthara asked, though her tone suggested she did not really want to know. "They said that climbing species are forged by hardship. Their worlds are harsh, dangerous places that kill the weak and strengthen the survivors. When such species reach the stars, they bring that strength with them." Kelthara's blue skin darkened with anger. "Pretty words, Elder. But my empire has conquered a dozen worlds. We have technology these humans cannot imagine. If they become a threat, we will deal with them." Voxani watched as the Zephyrian ambassador left the chamber. He had done what he could to prevent what he saw coming, but he knew that some lessons could only be learned through experience. In his private quarters later that night, Voxani opened the oldest section of the sacred archives. The warnings were all there, written by civilizations that no longer existed. They had all made the same mistake. They had messed with a climbing species. Far away, Jake Sullivan filed his report about the strange encounter near Jupiter. He had no way of knowing that his discovery would soon change everything for humanity. The galaxy was about to learn why the oldest law existed. 3 months after the council meeting, Admiral Zexitar stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Storm. The massive Zephyrian warship was twice the size of anything humans had ever built. Its hull gleamed with energy shields that could stop any known weapon. Around it, 50 more ships of the Zephyrian war fleet moved through space like deadly predators. Zextar was larger than most of his kind, with dark blue skin marked by the scars of many battles. His 4 arms moved constantly as he studied the tactical displays. The council had voted against immediate action, but the Zephyrian Empire had decided to act on its own. They would make an example of these humans before the problem grew worse. "Admiral," reported his intelligence officer, "we have reached the target system. The human colony of New Austin lies ahead." Zextar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Excellent. What do our scouts report about their defenses?" "Minimal, sir. A few orbital platforms with primitive weapons. Some patrol ships that are barely armed. The colony has 50,000 humans, mostly farmers and miners." "Perfect," Zextar said. "We will demonstrate Zephyrian power and crush their spirit in one stroke. Open a communication channel to the colony." On the surface of New Austin, Dr. Lisa Martinez was working in her laboratory when the alerts began. The colony's warning systems filled the air with urgent beeps and flashing lights. Lisa was the colony's chief scientist, a woman in her 30s, with long black hair and intelligent brown eyes. She had come to New Austin to study the planet's unique plant life, but now she stared at readings that made no sense. "Massive energy signatures approaching," she said to her assistant, a young man named Rick Chen. 51 objects moving faster than anything in our databases." Lisa ran to the communications center and tried to contact Colonial Governor Pete Hayes. Hayes was a big man with gray hair who had been running colonies for 20 years. He was competent, but sometimes too slow to react to new situations. "Governor," Lisa said when she reached him, "we have unknown ships approaching, large ones. This could be first contact." Hayes looked at the data she sent him and frowned. "Doctor, these readings are impossible. Nothing moves that fast. It has to be sensor ghosts or solar interference." "Sir, I've checked everything twice. These are real ships, and they're not human." Before Hayes could respond, every screen in the colony switched to the same image. A tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms appeared, speaking in a language that sounded like rushing water. The translation computers worked frantically to decode the message. "Humans of New Austin," the alien said, his translated words appearing as text on their screens. "I am Admiral Zextar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your species has been judged a threat to galactic peace. You will immediately surrender your colony and prepare for relocation to designated preservation zones." The entire colony fell silent. 50,000 people stopped what they were doing and stared at their screens in shock. They had always wondered if humans were alone in the universe. Now they knew they were not. Governor Hayes recovered first. "This is Governor Pete Hayes of New Austin Colony. We are a peaceful settlement. We have no quarrel with your empire. What do you want from us?" Zextar's image smiled coldly. "We want your compliance. You have 1 hour to surrender completely. All weapons must be destroyed. All ships must be grounded. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force." In the colony's maintenance section, Tony Blake was listening to the broadcast while working on a fusion reactor. Tony was a big man with calloused hands and 30 years of experience with power systems. He had served in Earth's military before becoming a colonial engineer. "An hour," Tony muttered to himself. "They give us an hour to surrender everything we've built." His assistant, a woman named Carol White, looked worried. "Tony, what do we do? They have 50 ships. We have maybe a dozen patrol boats with mining lasers." Tony was quiet for a moment, studying the reactor's control systems. "Carol, how long would it take to overload this reactor?" "What?" "Tony, you can't be serious. Overloading a fusion reactor would destroy half the colony." "Not if we do it right," Tony said. "Not if we time it perfectly." Governor Hayes called an emergency meeting with the colony's leaders. Lisa Martinez was there, along with Security Chief Dan Foster and several others. They met in the government building's main conference room, where a large window showed the alien ships hanging in space above them. Options? Hayes asked simply. Security Chief Foster shook his head. We can't fight 50 warships with our patrol boats. They'd destroy us in minutes. What if we surrender? Asked the agricultural director, a woman named Susan Torres. Maybe we can negotiate better terms. Lisa had been studying the alien transmissions. I don't think they're interested in negotiation. Their language pattern suggests this is an ultimatum, not an opening offer. The hour passed quickly. When Admiral Zextar appeared on their screens again, his expression had not changed. Humans, your time is up. What is your decision? Governor. Hayes took a deep breath. Admiral, we are civilians. We have families here, children. Surely we can work out some kind of arrangement that doesn't require us to abandon our homes. Zextar's 4 arms moved in what might have been a shrug. Your failure to comply is noted. We will now demonstrate why resistance is futile. The first energy beam struck the colony's main orbital defense platform. The structure, which had taken 2 years to build, vanished in a flash of blue light. The second beam destroyed the communication relay. Within minutes, all of the colony's orbital defenses were gone. Impressive, Hayes said quietly. But those platforms were unmanned. Are you planning to murder civilians next? If necessary, Zextar replied. But I prefer efficiency. You have seen our power. Surrender now, and we will relocate your people to comfortable facilities. In his maintenance shop, Tony Blake was making final adjustments to his work. He had spent the last hour rigging a feedback loop in the fusion reactor's magnetic containment system. It was delicate work that required precise timing. Tony, Carol said, security reports say alien shuttles are landing near the spaceport. They're coming down to take the colony by force. Tony nodded and activated his radio. All maintenance teams, this is Blake. Implement Emergency Protocol 7 on my signal. Emergency Protocol 7 did not exist in any manual. Tony had just made it up, but his teams understood what he meant. They had spent years working with dangerous equipment. They knew how to make things explode. The Zephyrian Marines who landed at the spaceport were confident and efficient. They wore powered armor that made them look like metal giants. Their weapons could cut through steel or stun a human with equal ease. They had conquered dozens of worlds using the same tactics. What they did not expect was for the spaceport's fuel depot to explode just as their shuttles were refueling. The blast destroyed 6 shuttles and killed 40 Marines. More explosions followed as fusion reactors across the colony overloaded in carefully timed sequence. Tony Blake died in the 3rd explosion, along with most of his maintenance team. But their sacrifice took 2 Zephyrian cruisers with them. The ships had been too close to the planet when the reactors exploded, and the electromagnetic pulse fried their systems. Admiral Zextar watched his ships fall toward the planet's surface, with growing anger. How is this possible? These humans have no military technology. Sir, his intelligence officer reported. It appears they used their own infrastructure as weapons. They turned their power plants into bombs. Zextar had conquered many worlds, but he had never seen defenders destroy their own colony to hurt the attackers. Continue the landing, capture the survivors, and find out who was responsible for this. But even as his remaining forces secured the colony, Zextar felt the first stirrings of doubt. These humans had fought back against impossible odds. They had sacrificed themselves to hurt an enemy they could not possibly defeat. It was not normal behavior for a defeated species. In the ruins of New Austin, a few hundred humans had survived by hiding in the old mining tunnels beneath the colony. Among them was a man named Sam Rodriguez, who had worked as a mining supervisor before the invasion. As Sam led the survivors deeper underground, he thought about Tony Blake's sacrifice and the two enemy ships burning in the planet's atmosphere. The aliens thought they had won, but Sam knew better. The real fight was just beginning. The escape pod tumbled through space for 3 days before Earth patrol ships found it. Inside was Kate Sullivan, a young engineer who had barely escaped New Austin before the colony fell. She was Jake Sullivan's younger sister, with the same steady blue eyes and determination. Kate sat in the medical bay of the rescue ship, telling her story to Commander Frank Miller of Earth Defense. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook as she described the alien attack. "They came without warning," Kate said. 50 ships, maybe more. Their weapons destroyed our orbital platforms like they were made of paper. Governor Hayes tried to negotiate, but they weren't interested in talking. Commander Miller recorded every word. Earth had lost contact with New Austin 5 days ago, but they had hoped it was just a communication problem. Now they knew the truth. "What about survivors?" Miller asked. "Some people made it to the mining tunnels before the bombardment started, but I don't know how many." Kate's voice cracked slightly. "Commander, these aliens are not like anything we imagined. They're powerful, and they think we're just insects to be stepped on." Within hours, Kate's report reached Earth Command. The United Earth Federation called an emergency session. Admiral Patricia Young, the head of Earth Defense, stood before the Federation Council with grim news. "Fellow Council members," Admiral Young said, "we are no longer alone in the universe, and our new neighbors are hostile." The council chamber buzzed with worried conversations. President Robert Chen, an elderly man who had led Earth through several crises, called for order. "Admiral Young, what are our defensive capabilities?" Young's expression was bleak. "Limited, sir. We have 47 warships, most of them designed for patrol duties. Our weapons are kinetic projectiles and nuclear missiles. According to Miss Sullivan's report, the alien shield stopped everything we fired at them." Recommendations. "We need to evacuate the outer colonies and pull our fleet back to defend Earth. We also need to start reverse engineering any alien technology we can find." Deep beneath the surface of New Austin, Sam Rodriguez was organizing the survivors. The mining tunnels were extensive, running for hundreds of miles under the planet's surface. About 300 humans had made it underground, including several children and elderly colonists. Sam was a practical man in his 40s, with dark hair and strong hands from years of mining work. He had never been a soldier, but he understood tunnels and machinery better than anyone. "Listen up, people," Sam said to the group gathered in the main tunnel junction. "The aliens have taken the surface, but they don't control down here. We have food stores, water recyclers, and enough air to last for months." A woman named Janet Morris raised her hand. She had been a teacher before the invasion. "Sam, what's the point? They have starships and energy weapons. What can we do against that?" "We can make them pay for what they did," said a voice from the back. Everyone turned to see Danny Torres, a young man who had been studying to be a pilot. His parents had died in the bombing. "Tony Blake took out 2 of their ships with mining equipment. We can do more damage if we're smart about it." Sam nodded. "Danny's right. These tunnels connect to every major installation on the planet. Power plants, communication centers, mining equipment. The aliens need those facilities to hold this world." Above ground, Admiral Zextar was learning that occupying a human world was harder than conquering it. His Marines were efficient fighters, but they were having trouble with New Austin's environment. The Zephyrians had evolved from an aquatic species, and the planet's dry climate was hard on them. "Admiral," reported his ground commander, Colonel Vexhall, "we're having problems with the occupation. Our sensors detect movement in the underground tunnels, but the passages are too narrow for our armor, and the air down there is too dry for extended operations." Zextar studied the tactical display. Red dots marked known tunnel entrances, but there were probably dozens more that they had not found. "What about sealing the tunnels?" "We've tried, sir, but they're connected to the planet's infrastructure. If we collapse the main passages, we'll damage the power grid and water systems that we need." Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Alex Chen was working around the clock in his laboratory. Alex was a thin man with glasses and an intense focus on his work. He had been studying theoretical physics before the crisis, but now he was trying to understand alien technology. His assistant, Rebecca Foster, was a former military engineer who had joined the research team after her brother Dan was reported missing on New Austin. She had short red hair and a no-nonsense attitude that complemented Alex's scientific approach. "Any progress?" Rebecca asked as she entered the lab. Alex looked up from a piece of twisted metal. "This is part of a Zephyrian energy weapon that Kate's escape pod picked up. The power source is unlike anything we've ever seen, but there's something interesting about how it failed." Failed? When Tony Blake's reactor exploded, the electromagnetic pulse didn't just damage the alien ships. It seemed to confuse them. Their targeting systems went haywire for several minutes. Rebecca leaned over the workbench. "Are you saying their technology is vulnerable to electromagnetic interference?" "More than that," Alex said excitedly. "I think their computer systems are based on quantum processing that's extremely sensitive to certain frequencies. If we can generate the right kind of pulse..." Back on New Austin, the human resistance was about to test their own theories. Sam. Rodriguez had spent 2 weeks studying the alien patrol patterns. The Zephyrians were systematic but predictable. They followed the same routes at the same times every day. "Tonight we hit the communications center," Sam told his team. "Danny, you'll lead the explosive team. Janet, your people will create a distraction at the north entrance. I'll take the main group through Tunnel 7. The plan was simple but dangerous. The communications center was heavily guarded, but it was also critical to alien operations. If they could destroy it, the enemy would lose contact with their fleet. Danny Torres had become expert at making bombs from mining equipment. He carried a backpack full of modified detonators as his team crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnels. At 19, he was the youngest member of the resistance, but his anger at his parents' death made him fearless. The attack began at midnight. Janet's diversionary group set off explosions near the north perimeter, drawing the alien guards away from the communications center. Sam's main force emerged from hidden tunnel entrances and rushed the facility. The Zephyrian Marines were caught off guard. Their thermal sensors had not detected the humans moving through the cool underground passages. By the time they realized what was happening, Danny's bombs were already in place. The communication center exploded in a flash of light that could be seen from orbit. The blast also triggered a feedback pulse that damaged several alien ships in the landing area. For 6 hours, the occupation force was cut off from their fleet. Admiral Zextar received the news with growing frustration. "How many of these humans are still alive down there?" "Unknown, sir," Colonel Vexhall admitted. "Our estimates range from 50 to 500, but they know the tunnel systems better than we do. Every time we send troops underground, they vanish like ghosts. What about flooding the tunnels? The water table is too deep, sir, and many of the passages are lined with industrial materials that would take days to cut through. Meanwhile, Dr. Alex Chen had made another discovery. He was studying recordings of the alien communications, looking for patterns in their technology. "Rebecca, look at this," he said, pointing to a wavelength analysis on his computer screen. The Zephyrian neural implants operate on a very specific frequency. It's how they coordinate their forces. Can we jam it? Better than that, Alex said with a grin. I think we can turn it against them. Human brain patterns are naturally chaotic, but alien minds seem to work in very ordered ways. If we can disrupt that order, Rebecca understood immediately. We could drive them crazy. Or at least confuse them enough to give our forces an advantage. On New Austin, the resistance was growing bolder. Sam's successful attack on the communication center had inspired other groups to take action. Small explosions occurred daily across the planet as humans struck at alien facilities and disappeared back into the tunnels. The Zephyrians responded with increasingly harsh measures. They began bombing suspected tunnel entrances and threatening to execute civilian prisoners. But for every tunnel they collapsed, the humans opened 2 more. For every facility they repaired, the resistance destroyed another. After a month of occupation, Admiral Zextar was forced to request reinforcements. His casualty reports made uncomfortable reading. The Zephyrian Empire had expected to pacify New Austin with minimal losses. Instead, they were bleeding troops every day to an enemy they could barely see. In the deepest tunnels beneath the planet's surface, Sam Rodriguez was planning his most ambitious operation yet. The aliens had brought down a command ship to coordinate ground operations. If the resistance could capture or destroy it, they would deal a serious blow to the occupation. It's suicide, Janet Morris said when Sam explained the plan. That ship has 50 Marines and energy shields. Maybe, Sam admitted. But they don't expect us to attack their strongest position. And I've been studying their shield generators. They have a weakness. The resistance operation began at dawn. Sam Rodriguez led 40 volunteers through the deepest tunnels toward the alien command ship. They had spent 3 days preparing, studying guard rotations and shield patterns. Sam carried a modified mining laser while Danny Torres hauled a pack full of explosives made from reactor components. The Zephyrian command ship sat in what had been New Austin's main square. It was a sleek vessel twice the size of any human shuttle, its hull gleaming with energy shields. 50 Marines patrolled the perimeter, while technicians worked to establish permanent communication arrays. Admiral Zextar himself was aboard the ship, reviewing casualty reports that grew worse each day. In 6 weeks of occupation, the Zephyrians had lost over 200 Marines to human attacks. The resistance seemed to grow stronger with each passing day, striking from the tunnels like vengeful spirits. Colonel Vekshal, Zextar said too, his ground commander, explained to me how a few hundred primitive humans are causing more casualties than our last 3 planetary conquests combined. The colonel's blue skin had darkened with stress. Sir, these humans fight differently than other species. They don't seem to fear death. They sacrifice themselves to hurt us, even when they can't win. All species fear death, Zextar replied. Find their weakness and exploit it. But as the colonel left to organize another sweep of the tunnels, Zextar wondered if he was wrong. The humans had shown a willingness to die that was unlike anything in his experience. Even their children fought with desperate courage. Deep beneath the ship, Sam's team was moving through maintenance tunnels that connected to the old sewer system. The passages were narrow and uncomfortable, but they led directly under the landing area. "Remember," Sam whispered to his team, "we only get one chance at this. Danny, your job is to get those explosives to the shield generator. The rest of us will create enough chaos to cover his approach." Janet Morris, who had become one of Sam's most reliable fighters, checked her improvised weapon. It was a mining tool modified to fire metal spikes at high velocity. "Sam, even if we take out the shields, that ship has heavy armor." "One thing at a time," Sam replied. "Danny's special surprise should handle the armor problem." Danny grinned and patted his backpack. Inside were 20 pounds of modified reactor fuel, rigged to burn at temperatures that could melt through any known material. It was probably enough to destroy half the landing area, including anyone standing on it. At exactly 0600 hours, the attack began. Sam's team emerged from hidden tunnel entrances around the perimeter of the landing area. Their weapons were crude by galactic standards, but they were effective at close range. The first volley of metal spikes caught the Zephyrian guards completely by surprise. The alien Marines reacted quickly, raising energy shields and returning fire with plasma weapons. But the humans moved differently than other enemies. They used the wreckage of buildings for cover, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Their attack pattern seemed random, but it was actually carefully coordinated. While the main fight drew attention, Danny Torres crawled through a drainage pipe toward the command ship's shield generator. The device was a complex array of crystal matrices that created an energy barrier around the vessel. Danny had studied its design for weeks, looking for weaknesses. The shield generator was defended by 6 Marines, but they were watching the main battle. Danny emerged from the pipe directly below their position and planted his first explosive before anyone noticed him. By the time the guards realized the danger, he had already activated the timer. The explosion that followed was unlike anything the Zephyrians had seen. Instead of a simple blast, the modified reactor fuel created a sustained burn that ate through the shield generator like acid. The energy barrier around the command ship flickered and died. Admiral Zextar felt the ship shudder as the shields failed. "What's happening?" "Shield generator destroyed, sir," his communications officer reported. "The humans are attacking with some kind of corrosive explosive." "Impossible. Our intelligence reports say they don't have that technology." But even as Zextar spoke, he could see human fighters rushing toward his ship. They carried more of their improvised weapons, and their faces showed the same desperate determination that had cost him so many Marines. The battle for the command ship lasted 20 minutes. The Zephyrians had better weapons and armor, but the humans fought with a fury that was hard to understand. They used their own bodies as shields to protect their explosives. They continued fighting even when mortally wounded. In the end, it was Sam Rodriguez who reached the ship's hull. He had taken 3 plasma hits that would have killed most beings, but he kept moving through sheer willpower. With his last strength, he attached Danny's largest explosive to the ship's main power coupling. The blast tore through the command ship's hull and killed Admiral Zextar instantly. The explosion also triggered a chain reaction that destroyed most of the landing area and 30 more Zephyrian Marines. Sam died in the explosion, but his sacrifice achieved something unprecedented. The humans had killed a Zephyrian admiral and destroyed a command ship using nothing but mining equipment and determination. The news of Admiral Zextar's death spread quickly through the alien fleet. The remaining Zephyrian forces on New Austin were leaderless and demoralized. They had come to pacify a primitive world, but instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with each defeat. Far across the galaxy, other alien species were beginning to take notice. The Nexari crystal beings monitored Zephyrian military communications with growing interest. The energy-based Vorthak also observed the situation, comparing it to historical records of other conflicts. On Nexus Prime, Elder Voxani received reports of the new Austin resistance with sad satisfaction. He had warned the Council about the dangers of attacking a climbing species, but they had not listened. Now the galaxy was beginning to see why the old laws existed. Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Jake Sullivan was preparing for his own mission. Jake had been promoted to command the experimental battleship New Frontier, a vessel built using stolen alien technology. Dr. Alex Chen's research team had made significant breakthroughs in understanding Zephyrian systems. Captain Rebecca Foster reported as she entered the bridge, "We finished installing the new electromagnetic pulse generators. Dr. Chen thinks they should disrupt alien targeting systems." Jake studied the tactical display showing the blockade around New Austin. 12 Zephyrian ships surrounded the planet, preventing any human vessels from approaching. But Jake had ideas about how to break through their defenses. "What about the neural disruptors?" Jake asked. "Those are still experimental," Rebecca admitted. "Dr. Chen thinks they might confuse alien coordination systems, but we won't know until we test them in battle." Jake's ship was part of a fleet of 20 vessels that Earth had converted for combat. They were still outgunned by the aliens, but they had advantages that the enemy did not expect. Human tactics were unpredictable, and their technology was becoming more sophisticated. "Signal the fleet," Jake ordered. "We're going to New Austin." The journey took 3 days. As the human fleet approached the blockade, the Zephyrian ships moved to intercept them. The alien commander, General Kex Mara, had replaced Admiral Zextar and was determined to prevent any human reinforcements from reaching the planet. "Human vessels," General Kex Mara transmitted. "You are entering a restricted system. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Jake's response was to order his ships to attack formation. The New Frontier and its escorts charged directly at the alien blockade, their weapons charging and their new defensive systems active. The Battle of New Austin began with both sides firing at maximum range. Zephyrian plasma beams struck human shields, while Earth missiles and kinetic projectiles hammered alien defenses. But this time, the humans had surprises. Dr. Chen's electromagnetic pulse generators worked better than expected. The alien targeting systems began to malfunction, causing their weapons to fire wildly. Several Zephyrian ships found themselves shooting at empty space, while human vessels closed to point-blank range. Jake's neural disruptors were even more effective. The devices broadcast chaotic patterns that interfered with alien coordination, implants. Zephyrian crews began to experience confusion and disorientation, unable to work together effectively. But the real advantage was human tactical thinking. Jake used strategies that seemed suicidal but were actually carefully calculated. He ordered his ships to ram damaged alien vessels, trading human lives for enemy casualties. He split his formation into smaller groups that attacked from unexpected angles. The Zephyrians had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Their military doctrine was based on overwhelming firepower and technological superiority. They were not prepared for opponents who used their own deaths as weapons. When the battle ended, 8 Zephyrian ships were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had lost 12 vessels, but they had broken the blockade. Jake's ship limped toward New Austin, its hull scarred, but its mission successful. On the planet's surface, the surviving resistance fighters saw human ships landing and felt hope for the first time in months. Sam Rodriguez was dead, but his sacrifice had made this moment possible. The Zephyrian High Command met in emergency session aboard their mobile fortress, the Dominion's Edge. The massive ship was the size of a small moon, housing millions of beings and serving as the Empire's military headquarters. Today, the Council. Chambers buzzed with angry voices and clicking of claws on metal tables. Supreme Admiral Kolvarek stood before the assembled commanders, his ancient blue skin marked with the ritual scars of countless victories. At over 300 years old, he had conquered more worlds than any Zephyrian in history. But the reports from New Austin filled him with rage. "Explain to me," Kolvarek said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation implants, "how a species that barely has spaceflight has destroyed one of our fleets and killed Admiral Zextar." General Kexamara, the survivor of the New Austin blockade, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Supreme Admiral, these humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They use their own ships as missiles. They turn their infrastructure into weapons. They seem to prefer death to surrender." "Impossible," declared Admiral Nextara of the Intelligence Division. "All intelligent species value survival above all else. These humans must have some weakness we haven't discovered." But another voice spoke from the back of the chamber. Perhaps the old warnings were true after all. All heads turned toward Admiral Velkan, one of the few Zephyrians old enough to remember the ancient stories. His skin was pale with age, and his forearms moved slowly as he accessed the tactical displays. "What warnings?" Kolvarek demanded. "The archives speak of climbing species," Velkan said carefully. "Races that evolved on harsh worlds where survival required constant struggle. The records say such species become stronger under pressure, not weaker." Supreme Admiral Kolvarek's anger flared. "Are you suggesting that we cannot defeat a primitive species because of old superstitions?" "I am suggesting," Velkan replied, "that we may have made a serious error in judgment." But Kolvarek was not interested in old stories. "We will crush these humans with overwhelming force. General Kexmara, mobilize the Grand Fleet. I want 5,000 ships ready for deployment." "Sir?" Kexmara said hesitantly. "Our allies in the Galactic Council may object to such extreme measures." "Then we will call upon our true allies," Kolvarek declared. "Send word to the Nexari Collective and the Vorthak Empire. Tell them the human threat must be eliminated before it spreads." Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Alex Chen was working 20-hour days in his expanded laboratory. The research facility had grown from a single room to an entire complex, staffed with the brightest human minds available. Alex himself looked exhausted, his thin frame bent over tables covered with alien technology. His assistant, Rebecca Foster, brought him another cup of coffee and a progress report. "Alex, you need to sleep. You've been up for 43 hours straight." Alex looked up from a partially disassembled Zephyrian computer core. "Sleep is a luxury we can't afford. The aliens are calling in reinforcements. Our intelligence reports suggest they're planning a massive assault. Any breakthroughs?" Alex smiled for the first time in days. "Actually, yes. I've figured out why our electromagnetic pulses work so well against them. Their quantum processing systems are incredibly efficient, but they rely on perfect coherence. Any disruption causes cascade failures." Rebecca studied the technical diagrams on Alex's screen. "Can we weaponize that? I'm working on adaptive shielding that can learn and counter alien weapon frequencies. But the real breakthrough is this. Alex pointed to a strange device that looked like a cross between a radio antenna and a musical instrument. I call it an emotional amplifier. Emotional amplifier? Human brain patterns are chaotic because we feel emotions while we think. Fear, anger, hope, love, they all create interference in our neural activity. But what if that interference isn't a weakness? What if it's a strength? Rebecca frowned. I don't understand. Alex's excitement was infectious. I've been studying the combat reports from New Austin. Human soldiers performed impossible feats when they were angry or desperate. Their equipment worked better. Their aim improved. Their endurance increased. Emotion somehow enhances our technology. At that moment, Kate Sullivan entered the laboratory. Jake's sister had become one of Earth's most valuable intelligence analysts, studying alien tactics and developing countermeasures. Her escape from New Austin had given her insights that no one else possessed. Alex, Rebecca, Kate said urgently, we have a problem. Our deep space monitors are detecting massive alien fleet movements, thousands of ships converging on human space. Alex felt his heart sink. How long do we have? 2 weeks, maybe 3. And it's not just Zephyrians. We're detecting crystalline vessels that match Nexari signatures and energy formations that could be Vorthak ships. Rebecca cursed quietly. They're forming an alliance against us. Kate nodded grimly. It gets worse. They've issued an ultimatum to the Galactic Council. Either humanity surrenders completely, or they'll sterilize every human world. On Mars, Defense Coordinator Maria Santos was preparing for the worst. Mars had become humanity's main military production center, its vast underground factories working, around the clock to build ships and weapons. Maria was a career military officer, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and steady hands that never shook, even under pressure. Status report, Maria called as she entered the command center. Colonel James Park, her second in command, pointed to the tactical displays. We have 400 ships ready for combat, with another 100 in final testing. The new adaptive shielding is installed on 60% of the fleet. Weapons? Electromagnetic pulse generators on all vessels, neural disruptors on the larger ships, and Dr. Chen's emotional amplifiers are being installed as fast as we can build them. Maria studied the numbers with growing concern. 400. Ships against thousands was not good odds, even with their technological improvements. What about the colonies? Evacuation proceeding on schedule. Most civilian populations are being moved to Earth or Mars, but the outer colonies are refusing to abandon their homes. Maria understood their choice. The colonists had built new worlds with their own hands. Leaving everything behind felt like surrender, even if it was tactically sensible. Any word from the diplomatic corps? Colonel Park shook his head. The Galactic Council is divided. Some species support the alien alliance, others are staying neutral. Only the Wanderer ships have offered any kind of assistance, and that's just intelligence gathering. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, an ancient vessel drifted silently between the stars. The Wanderer ship looked like it had been grown rather than built, its organic curves covered in sensors that could detect energy patterns across multiple dimensions. Inside the ship, beings that had been old when the galaxy was young discussed the developing crisis. The Wanderers rarely interfered in the affairs of younger species, but the human situation was unprecedented. The probability cascades are fascinating, one Wanderer observed. Its thoughts translated into patterns of light. This species shows characteristics we have not seen in millions of years. They adapt under pressure, another agreed. Their technology improves through conflict. Their social bonds strengthen through adversity. And their emotional responses enhance their equipment performance in ways that should be impossible. The eldest wanderer, a being so ancient that its true name was lost to time, pulsed with thoughtful colors. Perhaps it is time to share what we know about climbing species. The galaxy has forgotten the old lessons. Back on Earth, Captain Jake Sullivan was testing his upgraded ship, the New Frontier Mark II. The vessel was larger than its predecessor, built with captured alien technology and enhanced by human innovation. Its hull gleamed with adaptive armor that could shift its properties based on incoming threats. "Emotional amplifiers online," reported his engineer, a young woman named Lisa Park. "All systems showing green across the board." Jake felt a strange, tingling sensation as the amplifiers activated. It was as if the ship was responding to his emotions, becoming more responsive when he felt determined and more protective when he worried about his crew. "It's working," he said in amazement. "I can feel the ship reacting to my thoughts." Dr. Chen thinks it's because human consciousness is quantum coherent in ways we don't fully understand, Lisa explained. "Our emotions create field patterns that interact with properly tuned technology." The test was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth Command. Admiral Young's face appeared on the main screen, her expression grim. "Captain Sullivan, report to Earth immediately. The Alien Alliance fleet has been detected at the edge of the system. We estimate arrival in 72 hours. Jake felt his pulse quicken, and immediately noticed the ship's systems becoming more responsive. The weapons charged faster, the shields stabilized more quickly, and the engines hummed with greater power. The emotional amplifiers were working better than anyone had hoped. Human technology was becoming something more than the sum of its parts, as the human fleet gathered near Earth. Pilots and crews noticed similar effects. Fear made their shields stronger. Anger improved their weapon accuracy. And hope, desperate hope for survival, seemed to make impossible repairs possible. The aliens thought they were facing a primitive species with crude. The Alien Alliance fleet emerged from hyperspace like a dark cloud blocking out the stars. 5,000 ships of 3 different species formed a wall of metal and energy that stretched across space. Supreme Admiral Kolvarek commanded from his flagship, while Nexari crystal ships hummed with stored power and Vorthak energy, beings pulsed with deadly light. On Earth, every human looked up at the night sky and saw their doom approaching. The alien fleet was so large that it created visible distortions in space, bending light around its massive gravitational field. Children pointed at the strange stars while their parents tried to hide their fear. Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the New Frontier Mark II, watching the enemy fleet deploy into attack formation. Around him, the human fleet of 400 ships looked pitifully small. But Jake felt something he had never experienced before, his ship responding to his emotions like a living creature. "All ships report ready for battle," announced communications. Officer Lisa Park. "Emotional amplifiers are showing unprecedented readings across the fleet." Jake nodded, feeling the ship's weapon systems charge in response to his determination. "Signal the fleet. Today we show these aliens what humans are made of." But before the battle could begin, something unexpected happened. A new ship appeared between the two fleets, a vessel unlike anything either side had ever seen. It was organic in design, covered in sensors that glowed with ancient wisdom. "Unknown vessel," Supreme Admiral Kolvarek transmitted. Identify yourself and withdraw from the combat zone. The response came not as words, but as pure thought transmitted directly into every mind in both fleets. I am Elder Vashatai of the Wanderer civilization. I speak for those who have watched the galaxy since its youth. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The Wanderers were legend, beings so old that other species treated them like myths. No one had seen a Wanderer ship in over 1,000 years. Wanderer, Kolvarek replied with barely concealed irritation. This does not concern your people. Withdraw and let us complete our mission. Your mission concerns all who dwell among the stars, Elder Vashatai responded. You face a climbing species, and you do not understand what that means. On his flagship, Kolvarek's 4 arms twitched with anger. We understand perfectly. These humans are a threat that must be eliminated. You understand nothing, the Wanderer replied sadly. Your species has forgotten the old lessons. You see only primitive technology and assume weakness. But climbing species are forged by adversity. They become stronger when challenged, not weaker. Jake listened to the exchange with growing wonder. The mysterious aliens were trying to warn their enemies about humanity. But why? Elder Vashatai continued. In our long existence, we have observed 17 climbing species reach the stars. 14 were destroyed by civilizations that thought them primitive. Those civilizations no longer exist. Impossible, Kolvarek declared. No primitive species could threaten an advanced galactic empire. The Keth Mori Empire thought the same thing 30 million years ago. They tried to pacify a climbing species called the Veltar. The war lasted 3 years. When it ended, the Kethamori were extinct, and the Veltar controlled half the galaxy. A chill silence fell over both fleets. Jake had never heard of the Kethmori or the Veltar, but the implications were clear. Even Elder Voxani, listening from his chambers on Nexus Prime, felt his ancient hearts skip a beat. The climbing species did not survive either, Elder Vashatai added. They burned out their own worlds in the effort to resist, but they took their enemies with them. Supreme Admiral Kolvarek had heard enough. Your warnings mean nothing, Wanderer. We have overwhelming force and superior technology. These humans will fall like all the others. Then you choose the path of learning through pain, Elder Vashatai replied sadly. We will observe and remember as we always have. The Wanderer ship vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving both fleets alone in the darkness. But its words echoed in every mind that had heard them. Jake felt his ship responding to his changed emotions. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. A fierce pride in being human, in being part of a climbing species that had crawled out of Earth's dangers to reach the stars. All ships, Jake transmitted to the human fleet. You heard what they said. We're a climbing species. Let's show them what that means. The Battle of Titan's Gate began with the largest exchange of fire in galactic history. 5,000 alien ships opened up with everything they had: plasma beams, quantum torpedoes, gravity disruptors, and weapons that had no human names. The space around Earth lit up like a miniature sun. But the human response was unlike anything the aliens expected. Instead of trying to match their firepower, the human ships scattered in all directions using patterns that seemed completely random. Some ships flew directly at the alien formation, others curved away in impossible spirals, and a few simply vanished from sensors entirely. "What are they doing?" demanded General Kexmara, watching the tactical display with confusion. "Their formation makes no sense," Supreme Admiral Kolvarek was equally puzzled. They're flying into our crossfire. It's suicide. But on the new frontier, Jake was implementing a strategy that only a human could conceive. It was based on something Dr. Alex Chen had discovered about emotional amplifiers. They worked better when humans trusted their instincts instead of following rigid battle plans. "Trust your feelings," Jake transmitted to all human ships. "Let the ship tell you where to go." Across the fleet, human pilots felt their vessels responding to emotions they couldn't name. Fear guided them away from danger, anger drove them toward vulnerable targets, and hope showed them opportunities that no computer could calculate. The results were devastating for the alien alliance. Human ships appeared where they were not expected, struck where defenses were weakest, and vanished before return fire could find them. It was like fighting shadows that could bite. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the battleship Terra's Vengeance, felt her ship guide her toward a cluster of Nexari, crystal ships. The aliens' formations were geometrically perfect, which made them predictable to human intuition. "Fire quantum mines," Maria ordered, following an instinct she couldn't explain. The mines phased through the Nexari shields as if they weren't there, then detonated inside the crystal ships' hulls. 6 alien vessels shattered like glass, their beautiful geometric forms reduced to glittering debris. Meanwhile, Engineer Kate Sullivan was coordinating the fleet's electronic warfare from her command ship. The neural disruptors were working better than anyone had hoped, but Kate noticed something else in the data streams. "Jake," she transmitted to her brother, "the aliens are having coordination problems. Their command structure is breaking down." Jake understood immediately. The alien alliance was held together by rigid hierarchy and computer coordination, but human tactics were too chaotic for their systems to handle. The more unpredictable the humans became, the more confused the aliens grew. "All ships," Jake ordered. "Maximum chaos pattern. Follow your instincts, trust your emotions, and hit them where it hurts." What followed was the strangest space battle in galactic history. Human ships moved like living creatures, responding to threats with animal cunning, and striking with predatory precision. They used their own damage as camouflage, flying ships that should have been destroyed but somehow kept fighting. The emotional amplifiers were creating feedback loops that enhanced every human ability. Damaged ships repaired themselves through sheer determination. Depleted weapons found energy in their crew's anger, and pilots performed maneuvers that violated the laws of physics through pure force of will. Supreme Admiral Kolvarek watched his perfect formations dissolve into chaos, as human ships carved through them like wolves attacking a flock. His tactical computers couldn't predict human movements because they weren't following any logical pattern. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Their ships are inferior. Their numbers are smaller. They should be losing." But General Kex Mara had been studying the human tactics more carefully. "Sir, I don't think they're flying their ships at all. I think their ships are flying them." The breakthrough came when Jake Sullivan attempted what every tactical manual said was impossible. He ordered his ship to ram the alien flagship while his shields were down and his weapons were depleted. It was certain death for him and his crew. But as the new frontier accelerated toward the Zephyrian command ship, something extraordinary happened. The emotional amplifiers, fed by Jake's willingness to sacrifice everything for Earth, created a resonance effect that spread throughout the human fleet. Every human ship suddenly became more than the sum of its parts. Damaged hulls held together through determination. Empty weapons found power in their crew's love for home. And Jake's ship, which should have been destroyed by the first enemy hit, punched through 3 layers of alien shields and struck the flagship's main reactor. The explosion that followed was visible from Earth's surface. Supreme Admiral Kolvarek died instantly, along with his entire command staff. But more importantly, his death triggered a cascade of confusion throughout the alien fleet. Without their supreme commander, the three-species alliance began to fall apart. Zephyrian ships tried to maintain formation while Nexari vessels. 6 months after the Battle of Titan's Gate, the alien alliance returned with a vengeance. The death of Supreme Admiral Kolvarek had not ended the war. It had only made the aliens more desperate and angry. Now they came not to conquer humanity, but to destroy it completely. The new fleet that emerged from hyperspace was larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. 2,000 Zephyrian warships, 500 Nexari crystal formations, and 300 Vorthak energy constructs formed, a wall of destruction that stretched across space. Leading them was Admiral Morgeth, Kolvarek's most brutal successor, who had sworn to turn every human world into lifeless rock. People of Earth, Admiral Morgeth transmitted on all frequencies, his blue face twisted with rage. Your species has been judged a threat to galactic peace. We no longer seek your surrender. We seek your extinction. On Earth, President Robert Chen stood before the Global Defense Council with reports that painted a hopeless picture. The human fleet, rebuilt after the previous battle, numbered only 400 ships. Mars had gone dark 3 days ago, its orbital defenses overwhelmed by advanced alien scouts. The Jupiter mining platforms had been destroyed, and the outer colonies were falling one by one. Options? President Chen asked quietly. Admiral Patricia Young shook her head. Sir, we can evacuate maybe 10% of Earth's population to deep space. The rest... She didn't finish the sentence. Dr. Alex Chen, his hair now completely gray, from stress, spoke up from his position at the science advisors table. Mr. President, we have one final project. It's untested and extremely dangerous, but it might give us a chance. Explain. Alex activated a holographic display showing Earth's moon. We've been converting Luna into a massive weapon platform. The entire satellite is now one giant emotional amplifier designed to channel the thoughts and feelings of every human on Earth. What would that accomplish? In theory, it would create a psychic resonance that enhances every piece of human. Technology in the solar system. Our ships would become faster, stronger, more responsive. Our weapons would hit harder. Our shields would hold longer. President Chen frowned. You said it was dangerous. What's the risk? Alex's expression was grim. The amplification effect could burn out every human brain on the planet. We might win the battle, but kill ourselves in the process. In the command bunker beneath Colorado, young Danny Torres was training on flight simulators with other pilot cadets. At 20, Danny had survived the New Austin Resistance and become one of Earth's most promising young officers. His parents were still dead, but his anger had been refined into cold determination. Torres, called out his instructor, Commander Lisa Park, you're flying too aggressively again. Save some energy for the actual battle. Danny looked up from his simulator controls. Ma'am, with respect, there might not be much of a battle to save energy for. Commander Park understood his point. The alien fleet was 3 hours away from Earth orbit, and human defenses were collapsing everywhere. The moon-based weapon was humanity's last, desperate gamble. On the bridge of her flagship, the Liberty Bell, Captain Kate Sullivan was coordinating the final defense of Earth. Kate had been promoted after her brother Jake's death, and she carried his tactical brilliance along with her own engineering expertise. Her ship was the most advanced vessel in the human fleet, equipped with every innovation her species had developed. "Status report," Kate called to her bridge crew. "All ships in position around Earth," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Sam Chen. "The lunar amplifier is charging, but Dr. Chen estimates another hour before it's ready." "We don't have an hour," Kate replied, watching the alien fleet approach on her screens. "Signal all ships. We hold the line no matter what." The battle for Earth began when the alien advance guard reached the orbit of Mars. Human ships struck from concealment, behind asteroids and space debris, using hit-and-run tactics to slow the enemy advance. But for every alien ship destroyed, humanity lost 2 of their own. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the defense of the Mars orbital zone, watched her fleet dwindle with growing despair. Her ships fought with desperate courage, but they were simply outnumbered. When her flagship took a direct hit from an Nexari energy beam, she gave the order that every captain dreaded. "All ships, fall back to Earth. Mars is lost." The retreat was a fighting withdrawal that cost precious time and ships. By the time the human remnants reached Earth orbit, they had only 200 vessels left. Against them came the full might of the alien alliance, their weapons charged, and their crews hungry for revenge. Dr. Alex Chen monitored the lunar amplifier from his underground laboratory, watching power levels climb toward the critical threshold. The device was responding to the emotions of every human on Earth: fear, anger, determination, love, and desperate hope, all fed into the massive psychic resonance. 60% power, he called to his assistants. "We need more time." But time was something they didn't have. The alien fleet had reached Earth's outer atmosphere and begun bombardment of the planet's surface. Cities burned under plasma fire while human fighters tried desperately to break through enemy formations. Admiral Morgeth watched the destruction with satisfaction. "Focus fire on their population centers, make them watch their world die." But even as Earth burned, something was happening in the lunar amplifier. The device was responding not just to conscious human emotions, but to something deeper, a connection that linked every human consciousness in ways that science couldn't fully explain. Kate Sullivan felt it first. Her ship suddenly became more responsive, as if it was reading her thoughts directly. Her weapons found targets with impossible accuracy, and her shields held against attacks that should have destroyed her instantly. "All ships," she transmitted. "Something's happening. The amplifier is working." Across the human fleet, pilots and crews felt their vessels come alive in ways they had never experienced. Ships that had been damaged beyond repair somehow found the strength to keep fighting. Weapons that had run out of ammunition continued to fire. And most impossibly of all, human consciousness began to merge with their technology in ways that created something entirely new. Danny Torres, flying his first combat mission in a fighter barely larger than a car, found himself engaging Zephyrian cruisers that should have swatted him like an insect. But his ship moved with impossible grace, dodging between energy beams and striking at vulnerable points with laser precision. "This is incredible," he transmitted to his squadron. "It's like the ship knows what I'm thinking before I think it." The alien fleet began to experience something they had never encountered before. Human ships were performing maneuvers that violated the laws of physics. Weapons were firing with energy that their power sources couldn't possibly generate. And most disturbing of all, damaged human vessels were somehow repairing themselves in the middle of battle. Admiral Morgeth watched his tactical displays with growing alarm. "What kind of technology is this? Our intelligence report said humans were primitive." His science officer, a Nexari crystal being named Thekvor, pulsed with confused light patterns. Admiral, I'm reading quantum coherence effects that shouldn't be possible. The human ships are somehow connected at a subatomic level. Explain. It's as if their entire fleet has become a single organism. Each ship knows what all the others are doing. They're not just coordinated, they're unified. But the real breakthrough came when the lunar amplifier reached full power. Dr. Alex Chen felt the device activate with a psychic pulse that swept across the solar system. Every human, from Earth to the outer colonies, suddenly felt connected to every other human in ways that transcended physical distance. The effect on human technology was immediate and overwhelming. Ships that had been destroyed somehow found the will to continue fighting. Weapons depleted of energy drew power from their crew's determination. And most incredibly, human consciousness began to directly control matter at the quantum level. Kate Sullivan's ship, the Liberty Bell, had taken damage that should have killed everyone aboard. But as the amplifier reached full power, she felt her crew's emotions merge with the vessel's systems. Their love for Earth literally held the ship together, while their anger at the invasion supercharged the weapons beyond all specifications. All ships, Kate transmitted. We are more than human now. We are humanity itself. Show them what that means. What followed was the most impossible space battle in galactic history. Human ships moved like living creatures, striking with the precision of surgeons and the fury of wild animals. They appeared where they were needed, vanished when threatened, and fought with a coordination that seemed telepathic. The aliens began to understand that they were not fighting ships at all. They were fighting the collective will of an entire species, given physical form through technology that had transcended its original limitations. Admiral Morgeth watched his fleet dissolve under the human assault with growing terror. Retreat! All ships retreat! But retreat was no longer an option. The human fleet, empowered by the psychic resonance of their entire species, pursued the aliens with relentless determination. Ships that should have been destroyed hours ago continued to fight with impossible tenacity. As the lunar amplifier continued to pulse with human emotion, something R. 1 year after the battle for Earth, the galaxy was a very different place. The great council chambers of Nexus Prime, once filled with the confident voices of galactic powers, now echoed with nervous whispers and fearful glances toward the human delegation. Ambassador Kate Sullivan stood before the assembled representatives of 200 alien species, her presence alone enough to make many of them uncomfortable. She wore the simple blue uniform of the United Earth Federation, but everyone in the chamber knew that humans were no longer just another species seeking membership in galactic society. Honored council members, Kate began, her voice carrying. Clearly through the translation devices, humanity comes before you today not as supplicants, but as equals. We seek peaceful relations with all species who respect our sovereignty. The response was a mixture of relief and continued tension. Many species had expected humanity to seek revenge for the attempted genocide. Instead, the humans offered cooperation, but on their own terms. Elder Voxani, now one of the few beings old enough to remember the previous climbing species, spoke from his position of honor. Ambassador Sullivan, the Keeper Archives record, that climbing species have historically been difficult neighbors. How can the galaxy be assured that humanity will not follow the path of conquest? Kate's expression remained calm, but everyone in the chamber felt a subtle shift in the air around her. Since the psychic resonance event, Humans had retained a small but permanent connection to their technology and environment. Emotional states became visible as actual changes in local energy fields. Elder Voxani, Kate replied, humanity has no interest in conquest. We have learned that